Alright guys, so we are back today and we're going to finish off this piece which we started probably about a week ago now, maybe a little bit longer. I know it took a little while to get the second part out, so sorry about that. Hey, we're going to kick it off now. I know that a lot of you guys found this pretty useful, but then got stuck when it came to color, so hopefully we can help out with that. And if you guys did miss the first part, then I will put a link in the description below, and if I can figure out how to do it, I'll put it in an annotation as well. So if you're seeing an annotation right now, that means I figured out how to do it. If you're not seeing it, then that means I got lost and confused. So, Captain America. Right, well, let's get started. So the first thing that I always do when I go to start color is, obviously we've got our line work on our separate layer. Make sure you lock that, otherwise that can end in tears. That's probably the first thing. And then underneath it, you're going to set up your color layer, and we're going to start by doing flats. So I'll show you what that's all about in a second. But the other thing that I like to do is add a different color at the bottom, like a darker color. I don't do black because I still want to be able to see the line work, so I do like a dark gray, and then yeah. So also I tend to lock that just so you don't color on that layer as well. I've still got my orange scribble there, but I'm not really going to use it too much anymore. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up with the paint bucket tool at the moment. Now, if you're using Photoshop, obviously there's a paint bucket tool. I find it has a lot of issues. I very rarely use the paint bucket tool, but the Manga Studio one's really, really good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find what is the biggest bulk of color on the piece, and I will usually grab the lasso tool and flat color, so do a loose lasso around things. So I will start that now. Now, just for if you guys are watching this on YouTube, I did actually stream this as well. If you do hear me just interact with the stream chat a little bit, then my apologies, but we are streaming it, so if you guys are interested, my Twitch channel is in the description below as well. So you can see that I pretty much lassoed around the main bulk of it, and then just filled it with that blue color. There's a train. Alright, so then what that means is that the bulk of things are done then, so what I can do is I can sweep in here with my brush tool, and pretty much just hit the rest of it, and you'll see that I'm going to fill almost the entire thing in with one flat color. A lot of people say, oh, it's a waste of time, why don't you do it with the actual colors? But this is my process. Other people's process may change, so just do whatever you feel comfortable with. And I'm going to show you an example on why. Let's see if it's come up yet. Okay, a little bit on why I have the two colors as well. It's because color will appear differently on different colors. I think we covered that before. This isn't going to be a full color theory tutorial, but I will be doing that eventually. So let me just color this in here. This is the pretty boring part. But the other thing is, yeah, so color appears differently depending on what color it is on, and also you might see here, because I'm using a dark color, it looks like I've pretty much got it in the little cracks up here. I turn off that dark layer, and then you start see how you can see these little edges that you missed. So and that's because I'm working with a relatively dark color. Now if I was working with a light color, it would be the same but the opposite. So it would be revealed when I showed the dark layer as opposed to the light layer. If that makes any sense, confused myself, so that's great. Alright, so alright. So we're just gonna keep coloring. As you can see, I'll flick on that dark layer and the light layer. The other thing you're gonna want to have open is your reference image. I will put a link to I could probably put a link to the reference image that I was using in the description below, so for all you guys to follow along with at home. Of course, if you're in the stream right now, there is no description below, because there's no such thing as a description, I guess. So this is the really boring part, and I'm just trying to fill in time by talking about absolutely nothing. And so yeah, you get faster and faster at this. Now you can use the paint bucket tool to fill in most of it. As I said, the Manga Studio paint bucket is pretty good. It's got a little setting on it called the closed gap tool, which really does it helps sort of make sure or limit mistakes at least. Anyway, so that's really good. Okay, so now I'm going to turn on that dark layer and just check. See, before I couldn't really see where I was going out of the lines here, but then when you switch it onto that other color, you can sort of pick things out. Tiny little inconsistencies. Yeah, and down there. I think that'll pretty much do. So what that means now is that we've got the bulk of our character colored. So what we'll end up doing now is using a layer setting called the lock transparency, or lock transparent pixels. Now you'll see it over here on my layer properties. It's like a lock and a little transparent icon thing. However, Photoshop and Manga Studio, they both have the same tool. I think that the icon is fairly similar, but yeah, I mean, you can find it. It's in your layer lock settings. It's usually right next to your lock layer. And what does that actually mean? I've covered this off before, and a lot of people will be like, oh, well, I know what that does, so why are you even worrying about going over it? But I will do it anyway. It basically locks anything that you haven't colored. So it means that I can color out here, and nothing will come through. And then as I come into these sections that I colored, so you can see how that can really help speed things up, and it's going to as well. Now, the next thing what I'm going to do is, this is where I'm going to use my paint bucket tool a lot more, is I'm going to start picking through different sections and start filling them with their respective flat colors. So, you'll see me keep turning my head and just looking at our reference image here, just seeing where things sit. So that, go there. This is, again, it's pretty brain off kind of stuff. This is the second part to flatting, and then after this it gets a little bit more interesting. So just going to pick a decent brown here. I'm not really sampling from my reference image at all, but I am that's what happens when you select the gradient tool instead. Alright, so you can see how sometimes it doesn't quite work. One of the things I can do is, like, I know that these browns are going to be the same. It's going to be the same for the boots, it's going to be the same for the gloves, and it's going to be the same for those little baggies that he's got there. Which is, I don't know, I don't even have a clue what Captain America would even put in there. I don't know why he needs like 6 little bags around it. I mean, maybe his wallet and keys, and that's pretty much it. But it's up to him. He can put whatever he wants in there. He doesn't have any gadgets like Batman. So I can see that that's pretty much all the brown that I need, yeah. And I'm not entirely happy with that brown, but the reason why I just kept going is because now what I can do, obviously if I use my wand to select this section, it's going to select that entire section because I'm using select another layer for reference. Now, what I can do is I can turn off the follow adjacent pixel on my tool property, and you can see then that it's going to select all of that brown. So what I can do then is I can, all in one motion, I can just customize that a little bit till I'm happy with it. I sort of want a bit of a darker brown, more of a leather, and then maybe with a little bit more red in it, something like that. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Alright, so that's a little handy little tool as well. Now, this is another reason why it's important to put a color behind it, because when you start using white, it's very easy to forget about it because you're coloring on a white background. So that's why I have a darker background on, so that I make sure that otherwise you'll get to the end and you'll realize that the pupils are not done, the eyeballs aren't done, and stuff like that. We've all done it. So yeah, that's another reason why that can help. Ooh. Now I can also see that this section here shouldn't be here, so I can erase that out. Turn back on my lock layers. That's going to be white. So you can see we're adding no depth at all. We're literally just flatting things. And it is as simple as it sounds. And so his belt is going to be like a silver, something like that. And then the last is the relatively bright red, which sits sort of here and here, here, and obviously runs up here as well. So just skimmed out a little bit of details on the buckles, but that's okay because it's here to show process. I'm going to select that same silver there, and there, and paste that on there. So you can see so far that I have done this all on one layer. Now if you prefer, you can absolutely do it on multiple layers. In fact, I used to use a lot of layers until I got pretty confident with things, and slowly my layer count started to decrease a lot more. There's no rules, so don't let anyone tell you that you should be doing it one way or the other, or yeah, it's completely up to you and what you feel comfortable doing. You can just see that there's a little issue here with the line work, so I'm just going to fix that up, just clean that up a little bit, and then I'm going to lock my line work layer again just to make sure I don't screw it up. The red on the shield is going to be like this, but it's going to be a little bit more red. Probably something like that, I think. And then the white is obviously just going to be white star, and then the blue that we've had the whole time. Now what I am going to do is I'm going to use that wand tool again to select the blue, and I am going to I want it to be a little bit more saturated, I think. Oh, I'm pulling out the saturation there. A little bit more saturated, but a little bit more darker, a little bit more, yeah, a little bit further towards there. It was a little bit too pastel-y. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. And then what I can do is I can just pick a color to go in the mouth here. Generally the way that I do it is I will, well, that's not really that nice a color. I'll pick a pink for the tongue, and then usually I pick like a darker red for the mouth there. I usually use pretty pastel colors in there. Alright, cool. So, I mean, we are pretty much done now for the flat process, which is great. You can see we turn on and off we can turn on and off the background layer there to double check things. And we are pretty good to go. So, next step, as I drink my Red Bull, is we're going to determine our light source, and then work out our shadows, and then we can add our flat shadows, and then we can add our gradients and stuff like that, alright? So, I'm just having a look now. One of the other things, yeah, that's the other thing I did want to point out. You can see how the color changes a little bit, like how the eye interprets the color a little differently with a different color background. So I'm probably going to continue to color on the darker background. I think it's just a bit easier on my eyes. So for this, we're going to use a single light source. There's going to be no environmental light or anything like that, no reflected lights or anything, so that makes it a little bit easier. I'm going to jump up on a new layer, and I'm going to, and if it helps, then by all means do a new layer and point where you want your colors to be. I'm going to have my colors coming from this way, okay? And so that means that this section here is going to be in shadow. This section in here is going, hang on a second. Let's pick a better color. This section here is going to be in shadow. You're going to have shadow all through here. This is going to be all in shadow. This is going to be pretty much in shadow, I think, yeah. This will obviously all be in shadow. This is going to be in shadow to a certain extent. You're going to have a certain extent of this in shadow. And then the leg as well is obviously going to, will probably, you know, do something down here. I mean, it gets a little bit tricky. But then you're also going to have, you got to figure out the objects, how the character itself is going to be casting shadow. Alright? What I mean by that is, I mean, like the shield here, I mean, you've got light coming this way, so you're going to have like a reflection from the shield sort of running about here. So in the end, you know, most of this leg and in here is going to be in shadow. This arm itself might cast a shadow along there. Okay, this head itself is going to cast a shadow sort of that way. And so then all this then suddenly becomes in shadow. Alright, all this is in shadow. And all this, and all this. and it really just looks like I've scribbled all around the screen. But it's sometimes good to sort of stop, make another layer, and sort of assess how that's going to work. So now I'm going to come to the obviously we're going to have some shadow from the mask as well, but anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you guys probably one of the rules that if anyone's watched me stream, they hear me bang on about quite a bit, and that is shading with color and not with black and white. When you first start drawing, and we all did it, I'm sure a lot of you probably, and some of you probably still do, and I know I do sometimes, guilty of it sometimes as well, and that's like, okay, well I need to do my shadows. So we go around those sections that we decided we're going to be in shadow, like this. Alright, so I'm just using the marquee tool quickly, so this is literally just to illustrate a point. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select black and I'm going to fill it. Okay. And look, even to make it on even ground, I'm going to. You can see that I'm going a little bit outside the lines here. That's alright. You can actually lock that layer into the bounds of the layer underneath it. It is called clip layer to bounds. It's a layer mask in Photoshop. I can't remember where it is, but it is there. Alright, so I'm just going to do this really quickly. So, I mean, this isn't everything obviously, but it's enough to illustrate a point. So you might decide that you're going to do your shadows with black, and that is perfectly fine. Set it to multiply, and then most of you will probably drop it to about 20 or 30%. I'm going to put it on white so that the shadows stand out a little bit more. Our color, our blue is actually already quite dark, so it's going to be a bit hard for that to show up, but usually you're going to set it around somewhere between 20 and 30%. I'm going to put it at 20% there. It's not really showing up too much on the blue. Let's buff it up to about 30. You can see what's going on here. I mean, the color that you're getting here, okay, I'm actually going to sample that color exactly, and I'm going to paint it right here. It looks like something that's come out of someone's backside. It's like an atrocious desaturated version of the color that you had. I mean, and even sort of to the extent of, I mean, down here the brown's not too bad. Some colors are going to work better than others. This blue hardly looks like it's changed at all. But what happens is when you use black to shadow and when you use white to highlight, you're going to be desaturating the image, okay? Your image is going to become darker, and it's going to, I mean, yeah, desaturate is exactly the word. It's going to suck all the color out of it, essentially. So what I always try and tell people to do, and I'm going to do it all on the same layer again. This is how I work, is to select your base color, and so we'll start with shadows. Okay, so we're going to select the base color, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to twist my wheel a little bit. So if I'm going lighter, I'm going to move further up this way. If I'm going darker, I'm going to move further this way. Okay, now the direction will change depending on the color. Brown, for the darkest, I'm going to go more into the reds. For the lighter, I'm going to go more into the oranges and yellows. Okay, and you're going to see the difference as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that black there, and you guys can be the judge. I'm going to duplicate this so we can have a look at that at the end. Alright. Okay, so for the blue, what I'm going to do is select that base color. I'm not just going to pull it down to a darker blue either. I'm actually going to not undo the wrong thing. So I'm going to slide it down into this blue here, and I'm going to pull it down a little bit, okay? But I'm still going to keep it quite a saturated color, okay? Maybe pull it a little bit further here. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty happy with that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go around to all my blue sections, and I'm going to do that. And, you know, to be honest, I'm pretty happy with that sitting in color. This will all be in shadow. This will all be in shadow. So you can see I'm actually painting. I mean, there's no opacity at all. This is all just painting with one single color. Okay. Excellent. In here, obviously these sections are going to be in shadow. So you can, even just looking right there, okay, and I'm going to put this on, and I'm going to put you can see the difference already. So this is what we had before, and this is it with that darker blue, okay? Now obviously that's still a little bit flat for my liking, so especially on these big pieces here, I'm going to turn back on my follow adjacent pixel as my computer lags behind. Okay. And then even to the point where I'm going to sample this color here, just pull a little bit of that into the top, and then down here I'm going to pull it down even a little bit darker, and then sort of color in there. Alright, even to, I think this point here, I'm going to sort of gradient that down a little bit. Alright, I can see that probably up here, I might lighten that up a little bit, but we can get to that. Alright, so let's use the same process for the brown. I'm going to move more into the reds here, and I'm going to pull it, still keep it very saturated, and I'm going, yeah, maybe a little bit further, something like that. So still a very sort of saturated browny, reddy color. And I'm pulling other colors into it rather than just darkening the same color I had, or desaturating it. Alright, so we'll throw that over there. Throw this on here. Now, it's going to take a while before you start, you know, before your eye starts, and you know, understand it becomes natural to be picking colors this way, but it does come. So you just stick with it. It can feel really unnatural, especially it can feel like it's going to take a lot longer than just coloring everything with with black. But it is well worth it when you start to bring that into your process. I think so, anyway. You may disagree. Then I'm going to go here. So I'm going to leave that light there because it's probably okay there. Alright. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that same process, but I'm going to add the gradients to a lot of the sections now as well. Okay, so working on the blue mostly. I like to work on one color generally at a time, now that I've shown you that process a little bit. And you'll start to see that. So what I can do here is what most people do, move toward, if I move towards that white, I mean, I'm going to get so that sort of color start to come through, but if I slide this up here to this lighter blue, sample that color, slide up to this lighter blue, and then keep this desaturate. Can you see how much more that pops out? Those brighter colors really start to come out. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, you know, do the same on the legs here. And this doesn't necessarily, I mean, a lot of people know that sometimes my color doesn't, the lighting doesn't necessarily match exactly 100% where things would sit. Obviously, I like to like with my perspective, I like to overplay things a little bit, so you'll be like, oh, that's a bit too light or something like that. Then yeah, just sometimes that is just how I do it style wise. And what I'm going to do here is I am going to select this, select this color here, and then select this color again, match that up. So you can see how that's really starting to bring out the blues a bit more now, which is really important. It's really important when it comes to red, because with red a lot of people move it towards white and then they go, oh, why is it coming out pink? Well, it doesn't have to. Okay, you can actually highlight red with using orange. Okay, so I'm going to, you know, use my orange here, and I'm going to also select this red here, move it down here, and bring in like a even darker red. And you can sort of mix those colors around a little bit. That orange, I might even pull up even a little bit higher to almost like a yellow. You know, it's just a matter of playing around with things. Again, I'm going to pick this blue, which is more of a saturated light blue, like that. And I'm going to come down here in these sections here. Like that. Yep. And I'm going to select this higher color again. Let me go a little bit higher. And I'm going to just hit them like that. Just add a little bit of visual interest there. Pretty much happy with how that is for the blue. For this red here, same thing. Slide it up towards the orange and pull those oranges through. So you're sliding your color wheel more than sort of picking a color in the same in the same spectrum. That's probably not the word, but you guys know what I mean. Now what I got to do is okay, so I won't go into too much detail. The process is pretty much the same, but I won't go into too much further on. I'll just sort of keep doing it. Now, skin is exactly the same. Like if I was going to, like you get that sort of almost like a tan, but you can actually pull it down. I mean, and you can, and you'll see a lot of my skin is sort of maybe shaded with like a pink. You know, I might just add like a little bit of shadow here, and then sort of fill that in here, and then obviously where our mask would sit, we can pretty much fill. Whoops, that's not going to want to go up there. It's going to want to snap to that. There we go. I don't think we need it anyway. No, that's fine. Maybe like a little bit in here, but it's already, it's okay. So you see how I'm using that pink color rather than like a burnt out sort of skin tone or anything like that. That crappy pooey color that we had before. I'm just going to narrow it down a little bit. I think that the shadow is a little bit too much. But that's the process for like doing my flat shadows. You can see I did a lot of flat shadows there. Minecraft is very, very easy to add shadows to because it is all squares and stuff like that. It's very easy to figure out where your shadow should be. White is a little bit different. You are sort of most of the time going to pick a more desaturated, but you're going to pick a grey. There's times when you can get away with doing fancy things like using pinks and stuff like that, but for the most part, you can just throw it in with a grey there. Something like that. Same with down here, we might just add like a little bit. Okay, something like that. Alright, so you can already see it's starting to take shape a little bit. I mean, technically I could probably have a little bit of shadow in here, and I probably would throw something like that in. I don't want to go too much there, so probably just something like that. Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, even to a certain extent, this here would be in shadow, and then this here would have a little edge to it as well, so you can hit it with that brush tool. Okay, so there we go. So you can see, yeah, it's already starting to take shape a little bit. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add in where I think that some shadows from things like the arm and the shield are going to sit. You know, this isn't in shadow at the moment, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw in like a little shape here, and then the way that I'm going to do it is I'm not going to fill that whole thing. I mean, I could, but what I like to do is something where, and this is where it's not 100% natural, but I think it looks good, so this is why I do it, is I'm going to take that airbrush and I'm just going to hit that edge. And you can see that in this area up here, it's still going to stay the base color, and then the edge is just going to be hit there. Okay, so yeah, I mean, that's probably a really bad way of explaining it, but hopefully that makes sense. The only thing I will change there is probably the angle of the circle. Yeah, there we go. Probably more something like that. And then what I can do is I can just sort of work that up. And you can add in as much or as little as you like. Maybe add a little bit more down the bottom. Yeah, I mean, that I'm pretty happy with how that sits there. I think these bags would probably look alright to have like a little bit of shadow sort of creeping in here. And then the same thing, I'm just going to hit this edge. And it's going to cast a shadow along there. It's going to sort of simulate that a little bit. I'm going to be jumping over all over the shop a little bit, and I'm going, and I mean that is typically sort of how I work. I try and tell myself to stay on track and color one color and do all the gradients and do all the shadows and everything, but I very rarely do that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you, and you can see how I paint everything on one layer. So I'll just save that up. So you can see it already starting to take shape a little bit. This was the other one that we're looking at. Can you see how desaturated that looks? Obviously, I haven't gone to all the additional details I did on the other one, but you can hopefully start to see, you know, even if we buff that black up a little bit, you know, can you see how that becomes sort of dull and lifeless? Whereas when you start pulling color That's the best way I can explain it, pulling color into your shadows and stuff like that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the only custom brush that I actually use in Manga Studio. It's called G Pen 2 because it just duplicated the original G Pen, but it's got about a 50% opacity and it blends with the layer underneath. And this is what I use a lot for highlighting. And you'll see what I'll do is I'm going to pull in like this brighter color here, and I'll buff it up to about here. And I mean, if I was to, you'll see if I lay it down with this pen, you know, the more I go over the top of it, the more it's going to stand out. But one stroke, you can see like that. If I was to use a normal G pen, it's like that. So you can see how it blends in. It makes it pretty easy to highlight with, to be honest. I will attempt to put a download link in the description below. 90% certain I know how to do that. So exporting brushes in Manga Studio is a little bit different. Now, as I go down here, you can see that I've picked this highlight color a little bit higher than that. It gets down here, it gets a little bit too harsh. So what I like to do is I like to pick about a midpoint in this gradient and then work that down into it and then just blend it in a little bit. I'm going to select this and select probably this color here. You see, I got my I got the button on my pen set to the Alt, so I can easily sort of sample colors. Now, obviously, this color here is going to be a bit too much here. I always add like a little edging here, like you know, call it a rim highlight or whatever you want to do. I just like the way that it makes it stand out. Again, it's a little more maybe surreal is the word, and sort of proper where the light would fall. Blah blah blah. Smackety do. So we'll smidge down here, and then I'm going to probably take that color in a little bit here as well. So you see how that edging really starts to sort of bring things out a little bit. I can sort of hit this up here a little bit, and then, you know, even to a certain extent I'll probably come across here. And then what I'll sometimes also do is, and this is just purely for aesthetics, so I'm going to put like a little edging in here with that highlight color. You know what, and sometimes you got to sort of play around with the shape. There's a few different shapes that I go to, circles and swirls and stuff like that. Obviously don't want that A in there, so I'll minus that out. Yeah, I think something like that's okay. This edging though, this edging color, I'm going to continue down the edge of the mask here. Then up here. Keeping it fairly thin in these sections. Something like that. Yeah, it's starting to pop out a little bit there. My eye's going a little bit fuzzy, so I'll have a little bit more Red Bull and hopefully that'll fix things up. Now right here I am going to, I mean, for the skin, you're usually going to find that you will sort of use white to highlight. That's just purely because that's about sort of as high as you can get before, I mean, you actually got to start, before you start seeing it come through. And then for little details like the tongue, and then yeah, sure, I mean, I would just slide it like that, and, you know. But for your bulk colors and stuff like that, like even in here, sort of on these red straps, you know, I'll be picking this orange and I'll be pulling it down, and I'm actually going to go even higher than that, even more saturated. You know, I'm going to be pulling this orange down. Like people always say, oh, your color work stands out so much, and this is why. There's no tricks to it besides everything that I'm doing right here, and that is, you know, using these colors, these higher saturation colors, to sort of pull in. So can you see how that edging really starts to, even though it's quite small, well, you know, we might sort of do something like this. You can see how I approach it as well. I approach it like a painting, like everything is on the one layer. But you could do these highlights on a separate layer if you really wanted to. And then again up here, it's grey, so we don't really have a lot of leniency here. Then grey might be a little light for my liking. Yeah, it might have gone a little bit light there. That's right, I can tone that down. And then even on this edging here, I'm going to pick that highlight blue colour. stick it in this edging here, and run it along here. Even though this is in shadow, I'm still going to be hitting all those sections. Even down here. And the reason why I do that is because just as I said, like the way it looks, the way it stands out. You can tone it down a little bit if you need to. Alright. Yeah, so something like that. Alright, it's really starting to get there now. So the brown, again, I'm going to slide it up towards our oranges and move it up to a more sort of saturated value. Stay away from the white, pull the other way. Pull your dot the other way. If you don't have the color wheel mod installed for Photoshop, if you're using Photoshop, I recommend getting one, absolutely. Colaris is a really good one. So let's just pull this in here. Alright, so you can see that it's looking a little bit thin actually. You can see that it's standing out a bit too much. What I can do with this brush, I can actually sample that layer, that color, and just stroke over it. What it's going to do is it's going to dull it down a little bit. But what I am actually going to be doing is I'm going to be taking this orange, pull it up a little bit, and I'm going to be adding a little bit of that orange to the boot itself. And then that'll sort of help blend that in a little bit. It's still a little bit too high for my liking. Maybe something like that. And then what I can do is even another way of taking the edge off that. See, I'm just hitting it with that gradient again. Because it's all on the one layer, it'll all blend in. And then I can sort of just nullify that a little bit. The more I stroke over it, the more it's going to stand out, obviously. So here I'm going to want a little bit of less saturated, but still make it stand out, because this is technically in a little bit more of shadow. But I'm still going to hit these high edges because I want it to just pop out a little bit. So you can see how I'm just going to hit them a little bit like that. I feel that this is probably a little bit too orange. I sort of like where it is, but what I can do is I can just sample this brown color and then just going to hit it with the airbrush a little bit. See, I'm just tapping it, and that's just going to suck it down a little bit so it just takes off the edge of it. Alright, and then I'm going to select the orange again, and I'm going to, yeah, see, that's a bit nicer. I prefer that. Something like that. And then along here. Even though these are in shadow, you can see I've picked like more of the base color now. The color we started with. I'm just going to hit these a little bit. Just make these edges stand out just a bit. Yeah, okay, cool, we're getting there. So now belt buckle. We want it to be metallic. So obviously you can go right up to white here, and you can add this in here. And then here's a super quick way of making it look shiny. I'm going to select a little shape. I'm going to pick our base color, like right at the bottom of that gradient, and then I'm even going to pull it down even lower. And then just hit it like a gradient like that. Hell, we might even get in there a little bit more. We can then take our white and literally just work that in using exactly the same process. And if you want to, you can even add some shine, something like that. Cool, shiny, instant shiny. Probably do the same just in here a little bit. Well, we're not going to hit that. Going to hit there. Take our white like that. Lighten things up a little bit. I mean, we don't have a lot of environmental light and stuff to work with. It's because it is a fairly static image. But you can see this section here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select that. I'm going to grab my airbrush, select that orange color, and then make it a little bit bigger, and then just soften that a little bit like that. So add in almost like a natural highlight gradient, which works with those strong highlights. It softens it a little bit, and just helps it sort of bring it out a little bit more as well. Here you can see this is all in shadow, but I'm still going to add an edging to it. I'm going to pick more of my base color and just work it in, something like that. And yeah, I mean, we are, we're pretty much there. The one thing left to do is obviously the shield. So we're going to have to up our color margin for this. And this might be something where I would potentially just color on another layer just in case, but I'm going to be a little bit brave and or probably foolish. So the way that I'm going to make this look a bit shiny is using pretty much the same technique as down here. I'm going to try it with this darker. Yeah, so I can select this darker color and do the same thing there. I'm going to select that again. And what I can do is I can go more there. I'm going to even pull it down a little bit darker and then hit that there sort of thing. You see that starts to bring it out a little bit, at least in the red sections. What I can then do is select this highlight brush again, move it up towards this yellowy area. See, we don't want it coming out real mustardy like that. We sort of want to stick probably more towards the oranges, I think. Going to yellow is probably just a little bit too far. You see, I'm going to add like a little edge highlight. How far I go down, I'm not sure yet. All right. So, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much getting there like that. What we can also do is we can add in something like this where we do take a white and we just hit it ever so slightly. Yeah, something like that, which may look pretty decent, just maybe sitting just there. I'm pretty happy with that. Now, obviously, the parts which need work is the blue. So this is the tricky part now. So we got this edge here. We want to try and, yeah, we want to try and, oh, might take a few cracks. There we go. Match that. Sample our blue, pull it down a lot darker, and then just hit that edge. And then we're going to want to select it all again. We're going to want to try and, just using the lasso and then pressing Alt to, it's a bit off. There we go. And then I'm going to select maybe this color here and just edge it like that. And then I'm probably going to even try and bring this blue right up to something like that because it is metallic. And then I can work that in a little bit as well. This is a really quick way of doing metallics. You can go into a lot more detail with it, but for today's sake and argument, we'll just stick with something like this. Obviously, all that we've got left now is this grey, and that should be pretty easy to match. Not too bad. Pull down, and then you see this is probably the most tedious of all the things we've done so far, so and pull it down a little bit, something like that. You can obviously add like a nice little shine to it if you really want to, and as I said, you can get that looking a lot shinier. you know, looking into things such as a technique that painters use called non-metallic metal is, or NMM is, it can give you some tips for how to get sort of metallic and shiny looking without actually using metallic and shiny paint, sorry. And then I think overall what I might do is I might just add something like that, where I'm just going to minus that. I'm going to take it really dark and just hit that like that. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. I'd be happy with that. So yeah, I'm just having a look around. I mean, there's plenty more stuff that we can do. We can add like another layer of highlights, another section of stuff like that. Obviously, if there was an explosion, then you start to look at sort of environmental lighting. So that's when you start having this, you know, this orange glow coming from this side and stuff like that. But that's a completely another story. You can see that sort of what we wanted to have a shadow here for this buckle. So and obviously you pick up all the techniques that I'm using right here. Oh, the only other thing is this star. We want it to be white, obviously. And then what I wanted to do was I wanted to, it's maybe overkill though. We could probably do that. Alright. So what we want to do is we want to sort of section it into, it's not a perfect star obviously because it's hand drawn, so it's going to make it a little bit more difficult. Find that central point, something like that. And I'm going to pull my brush tool, I'm going to hit that like that. Again, find that central point, add that edge, hit that like that. Again, find that central point, edge, and hit that like that. You guys can probably see what I'm doing now. 99% of people that look at the piece will never see it, but you know that it's there, and that's the most important part. Ish. Oh. Have I done this one wrong? I have. Yeah, I have done that one wrong, haven't I? Thinking, what the hell? There we go. Space that star pop out a little bit more, but so yeah, I mean, we can take it a lot further. You know, we can add a little bit more, you know, a little bit more hard shadow in there. But that's a good example of how I use, you know, the hard lights plus the gradients and stuff like that. You can see I do a lot of gradient shadows, and then sort of pick out colors as they go, and that's pretty much it. So any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll try and do them. Again, I'll put this up for a download, and yeah, I'd love to hear if this helped you guys. Obviously, you can I could see I sort of color in the pupils and stuff like that. But be sure to tweet me your how you go with this. Now that we've done this, I've seen your Captain Americas. Now I want to see your color Captain Americas as well, and also how you're using it to adapt it. I've seen a lot of people use the tutorial to make their own stuff, which is really cool. So please, yeah, please, you know, leave them in the comments below, or tweet me, or email me, or whatever you want to do, and I would love to see it. So yeah, please like and comment if this helped you at all. If it didn't help you, then you can still like and comment. That would be great. And we'll, yeah, I mean, if you guys dig it and you guys show us some love, then I'd love to do another one of these. So they're a lot of fun to do. So. Alright guys, well that's me done, so I will see you guys in the next video, and as usual, peace!